Welcome back to Talk of the Town, and we are joined now by our news partner, Phil Anderson for U.S. Senate. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Ellen.
And today we are going to try and tackle taxes, at least attempt to.
We're going to do our best. That's
We're going
right.
to do our best.
It's a big subject.
Now, Phil, are you in favor of lowering taxes?
Oh, yes, very much so. Lowering them as low as possible. Taxation creates barriers for people to be productive and for businesses to be successful, and we need to get rid of them as much as possible.
And what specific taxes would you cut?
Well, I would get rid of the income tax right away. And I think that we've seen in states that have gotten rid of the income tax that people want to move there, people want to move their businesses there. Those economies in the states that have gotten rid of the income tax have been very successful, vibrant, growing, and that's what we can have for our whole country if we just get rid of the income tax. Also the payroll tax. That's a sort of a hidden tax that people don't really see come out of their paychecks so much. I mean, employers do, but that tax really makes it more expensive for employers to employ people. And as we want to grow jobs in this country, we should get rid of that so that it's easier for employers to create new jobs. It's just sort of common sense, I would think, but because that one goes a little bit more unnoticed by the public, it doesn't get as much play politically.
Now, why is taxation such a big issue for libertarians in particular?
It's a huge issue because basically it's theft. And it seems like pretty strong words to people that hear it for the first time, but let me explain it. Anytime a majority of people vote to take something away from the minority, that's theft. They're taking it. It's something that doesn't belong to them. And not only are they taking it, but they're using it for things that those people don't approve of. Let me give you an example. Most people don't approve of the way our federal tax money is spent in terms of foreign invasions and wars, etc. Most people don't want to do that. People are against war, and rightly so. But because a majority of people vote to have income taxes and other taxes levied through their representative government, then that money is being extracted from people by force, because you can't not pay your taxes, obviously, without going to jail, and then being used for things that we would never use it for. That pretty much fits the definition of theft. So when you look at it that way, in a very basic philosophical way, you see that taxation should be, there should be as little as possible, none ideally.
Now, what are your opponents saying about taxation?
Very little. Both of them talk about investing in things. Now, that is a trick word, investing, because it doesn't mean investing, their money, obviously. And the government's money all comes from us through taxation. So what they're talking about is spending, not investing. And when the government invests or spends, they're picking winners or losers. Whether it's between businesses or industries or demographic groups or whatever it is, they're picking winners and losers. So when they say invest, what they mean is taking more of your money and my money and spending it in ways that they choose, or their corporate sponsors choose, or whoever chooses, their parties choose, and we don't really get as much of a choice about it. So yeah, we need to do something about that, obviously.
Sure. And now, why isn't more being done at the federal level to cut taxes, do you think?
Because it's in the best interest of the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, as well as every department of the federal government, to have more and more taxation. And those are all tied together. Industries are powerful in terms of how they lobby our representatives, both Democrats and Republicans. Industry groups, lobbying groups, unions, what have you. Even the agencies themselves, every department of the federal government that you can think of wants to expand its budget and continue to do whatever it does. So they continually ask for increases in taxes, or at least not to decrease it. And you even notice in the way that both parties talk about taxes that even when they talk about cuts, for example, sequestering in terms of the military budget, they're talking about lowering the increases. They're not actually talking about decreasing taxes or spending. They're talking about lowering the increases, which is really illogical, and it's deceitful because they're not really lowering taxes. What they're talking about is just lowering spending, which is good, but we need to be more aggressive in that regard, recognizing that taxation is actually theft and bad for the economy.
Now, if you were to take office, what would you plan to do when it comes to taxes?
Well, I would preach from the highest mountain in all over the country that taxation is theft, and show people how it affects their lives and their livelihoods. Using examples of the states, Texas and Florida, that have gotten rid of the income tax, so that people see how a productive economy can grow without taxation, how economies and free markets don't depend on taxation and this so-called reinvestment to grow. What spurs job creation and economic growth is entrepreneurs and employers and businesses having the wherewithal, having the resources, having the freedom, having the ease of the regulatory burden to create jobs, to do more business, to trade more freely across borders, to do all those things that will create more jobs and more wealth, not only for businesses, but keeping in mind that most businesses are small businesses and owned by people that are in not the highest tax brackets, but that also creates jobs and people entering the job market. It's good for everybody.
Sure. Phil Anderson for U.S. Senate, our news partner. Thank you for being with us today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Ellen. I appreciate it.
And we'll be back with more Talk of the Town right after this.